A man enters a house, believing it could be his next big score, but what he doesn't know is that the true strength of the house isn't in its walls, but in who waits in the darkness. A light mist gently covered the streets of Pine Mountain on that cold winter night. In one of the most prestigious areas of the town stood the imposing mansion of the Adams family, an elegant construction that reflected the history of Martha Adams, known to everyone simply as Martha. At 68, Martha maintained her elegant posture, despite the loneliness she carried in her eyes. After the passing of her husband Richard, a respected former sheriff in the town, she found herself alone, in that mansion filled with memories. "Mrs. Adams, don't you think it would be better to hire someone to stay here with you?" asked Josephine, her housekeeper of decades, while organizing the medications on the nightstand. "I don't need anyone, Joey. I have Rex, and he's more protective than most people out there," Martha responded, caressing the head of the imposing German shepherd resting at her feet. Rex, already 9 years old, had been personally trained by Richard to be a police dog. Even in retirement, he maintained the vigilant posture and sharp instincts that had saved so many lives during his time of service. That same night, on the other side of town, in a small bar in the peripheral area, 3 men were talking in low voices. "The sheriff's widow's mansion is practically abandoned. She lives alone with that old dog," commented Mike, a middle-aged man with scars on his face. "They say she keeps a fortune in there. Family inheritance," added Jake, drinking the last sip of his beer. Charlie, who until then had only been listening, interrupted. "Let's forget about it. I don't want trouble with a cop's widow." "Are you saying you're afraid of an old lady and a dog?" Mike provoked. Charlie felt his face burn with anger. His criminal record was full of minor offenses, but he had never done anything really big. Perhaps this was his chance to prove his worth. Meanwhile, in the mansion, Martha prepared for bed. The house, despite being large, had an outdated security system, relying mainly on the reputation that Richard had built over the years. "Good night, my friend," she said to Rex, who positioned himself as always in the hallway, between her bedroom and the entrance to the house. The dawn advanced silently when Rex raised his ears, alert. His sharpened senses detected an unusual movement at the gate. The animal positioned itself, growling softly as it observed the shadow that slipped through the garden. The next morning, Hannah, Martha's only niece, arrived at the mansion with her always worried expression. The daughter of a sister that Martha never mentioned, Hannah had grown up away from her aunt, but since what happened with Richard, she had tried to maintain regular contact. "Aunt Martha, I came to see how you're doing," said Hannah, embracing her aunt with forced affection. "I'm, as always, dear." "You don't need to worry so much," Martha replied, observing her niece with suspicion. Hannah circled through the house, observing the valuable objects with poorly disguised interest. Her eyes stopped on a small jewelry box on the dresser. "These jewels are beautiful, Aunt. Family inheritance?" "Yes, some belong to my grandmother. Richard always said they were worth a fortune, but for me the value is sentimental," Martha responded, delicately closing the box. What no one noticed was Rex's attentive gaze, following Hannah's every movement, as if he knew something that humans didn't. On her way out, Hannah made a mysterious call. "Yes, she's still alone. The jewels are there," she whispered, looking back to make sure she wasn't being overheard. "But that dog doesn't leave her side. It's going to be more complicated than we thought." Night began to fall again in Pine Mountain. Martha, seated in her favorite armchair, was leafing through an album of old photographs when Rex began to growl at the window. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Let us know which city you're watching from. We continue. Martha quickly closed the photo album when she heard Rex's growl. She knew that sound well. It wasn't just any alert, but a signal that something was really bothering the animal. "What is it, my friend?" she asked, standing up with difficulty. Rex kept his gaze fixed on the window, ears perked and body tense. Martha cautiously approached and peered through the curtains. Nothing, only darkness and trees swaying with the cold mountain wind. "Must be some wild animal," she murmured to herself, trying to calm her racing heart. Rex, however, wasn't convinced. He continued on alert, Moving restlessly around the room, Martha decided to call Arnold, the gardener who also helped with small security services. "Arnold? Sorry to call at this hour, but Rex is very agitated. Could you take a look around the house?" On the other end of the line, Arnold responded sleepily. "Of course, Mrs. Adams, I'll be there in 20 minutes. While waiting, Martha returned to examining the photo album. Her fingers stopped on a specific image, Richard alongside a man she preferred to forget, Paul Matthews, her husband's former partner in an old real estate venture that ended in disaster. If Richard knew what Paul did afterward, she murmured to herself. The doorbell rang, interrupting her memories. Rex ran to the door, still on alert. Martha peered through the peephole and recognized Arnold. "I took a complete walk around the property, Mrs. Adams. I didn't find anything suspicious," the gardener informed after checking the perimeter. "But I'll do another round before I leave, just to be sure." "Thank you, Arnold. Rex never gets like this without reason," Martha responded, still worried. After the gardener's departure, Martha decided to make tea to calm her nerves. In the kitchen, while the water boiled, Rex remained, restless, now focused on the back door. "What's happening, Rex?" she asked, beginning to share the animal's anxiety. At that same moment, a few miles away, Charlie was in his small apartment, studying an old floor plan of the Adams mansion. The plan had been provided by Hannah, with whom he had maintained a secret relationship for months. "Are you sure your aunt doesn't suspect anything?" he asked, tracing entry and exit routes with a red pencil. "Absolutely nothing. She sees me as the dedicated niece who only wants her well-being," Hannah responded with a calculating smile. "But we need to get rid of that dog. He senses things that no one else perceives." Charlie nodded, thoughtful. His initial plan was simply to invade the mansion and intimidate the old lady, but now he realized he would need something more elaborate. "I'll need more information about her routine and about this dog," he said, finally. The next morning, the phone rang insistently. At the mansion. Martha, who had spent a restless night, answered with a voice still heavy with sleep. "Mrs. Adams, this is Dr. Maurice from the veterinary clinic." "Did something happen, doctor?" she asked, suddenly alert. "I'm calling to remind you that Rex needs to come in for a routine checkup. It's been almost a year since his last checkup, and at his age it's important to maintain vigilance." Martha sighed with relief. It was just a reminder. "Of course, doctor, I can bring him tomorrow." Upon hanging up, Martha didn't notice the dark car parked a few yards from her house, from which a man was carefully observing her movements through binoculars. In another part of town, Hannah was meeting with a distinguished-looking man in a discreet cafe. "Mr. Matthews, thank you for seeing me," she said, extending her hand. Paul Matthews, now with graying hair and deep wrinkles around his eyes, smiled coldly. "Any matter related to Richard Adams' widow interests me, young lady. I believe we have common interests. My aunt keeps more than just jewelry in that mansion," Hannah insinuated. "There are documents that could be very valuable to you." Paul's eyes sparkled with a mixture of greed and resentment. "What kind of documents?" "Evidence that Richard collected about your activities. Documents he never handed over to the authorities." Paul hardened his expression. "And why would you tell me this?" "Because I want to make a deal. You recover your documents. And well, let's say I'm more interested in other types of values my aunt possesses," Hannah replied with a calculating smile. In the mansion, Martha was organizing some old papers in Richard's office when she found a sealed envelope with the words, "To be opened only in case of extreme necessity." The handwriting was unmistakably her husband's. Martha's hands trembled as she held the yellowed envelope. Why, after so long, would she find something that Richard had hidden with such care? Rex, sensing his owner's agitation, approached and rested his muzzle on her leg, as if offering support. "What did you save here, Richard?" Martha murmured, absent-mindedly caressing the German shepherd's head. After a few minutes of hesitation, she decided not to open the envelope. "Extreme necessity," the instruction said. Despite the recent strange events, Martha wasn't convinced that the situation had reached that point. She kept the envelope in a drawer in her bedroom, locking it with a small key that she hung around her neck. That same afternoon, While Rex was resting in the garden, Josephine rushed into the room where Martha was knitting. "Mrs. Adams, there's a man at the door who says he's Mr. Richard's nephew," announced the housekeeper, visibly agitated. "Nephew?" Martha frowned. "Richard never mentioned having nephews. He said his name is Robert Adams and that he's in town on business. He heard about what happened to his uncle and wanted to pay his respects." Suspicious, Martha asked Josephine to have him wait on the porch while she called Rex inside. The dog entered quickly, positioning himself beside his owner as if understanding the need for protection. When she finally allowed the visitor to enter, Martha carefully observed the man of approximately 40 years, good appearance, and easy smile. There was something in his eyes that did not inspire trust. "Mrs. Adams, my pleasure. I'm Robert, son of August, Richard's younger brother who lived abroad." "Interesting," Martha responded coldly. "Richard never mentioned having a brother named August." The man's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "My father and Richard had a falling out many years ago. Unfortunately, my father also passed away recently, and among his belongings I found photographs and letters mentioning Richard. I thought it would be the moment to reconnect family ties." Rex remained on alert, eyes fixed on the visitor, and a low growl occasionally. Escaping, Martha noticed the animal's behavior, and this only increased her suspicion. "It seems Rex isn't convinced by your story," Martha commented, indicating the dog. Robert cast a nervous glance at the animal. "Dogs usually take time to get used to strangers. Perhaps on another visit we can get to know each other better." The conversation continued for a few more minutes, with Robert asking questions that seemed casual about the house and Martha's life. Before saying goodbye, he mentioned, "Heard that you keep some family heirlooms. My father always talked about a pocket watch that belonged to our grandfather. I would love to see it someday." "Unfortunately, I don't have such a watch," Martha answered dryly. After the visitor's departure, Martha immediately called Martin, an old colleague of Richard's at the sheriff's office, who now worked as a private investigator. "Martin, I need an urgent favor. Can you verify if Richard actually had a brother named August?" On the other side of town, Robert, who was actually Charlie using a false identity, met with Hannah in a discreet cafe. "Well?" Hannah asked anxiously. "Your aunt is smarter than we thought. And that dog?" Charlie shook his head. "He seemed to read my thoughts. I've never seen anything like it." "Rex has always been special. Richard trained him personally," Hannah commented. "Did you discover anything about the documents?" "Nothing specific, but I noticed she wears a key hung around her neck. It could be important." The next day, upon returning from the veterinary consultation with Rex, Martha found Martin waiting in front of the mansion. His grave countenance indicated important news. "Richard never had brothers, Martha. He was an only child. This Robert is an imposter." Martha nodded, not really surprised. "Is there anything else I should know, Martin?" The ex-policeman hesitated before answering. "Paul Matthews is back in town. He was seen meeting with influential people. I thought you should know." Martha's face paled. Paul Matthews had been not only Richard's partner, but also his greatest enemy in his last years of work. The case that separated them was never fully clarified for Martha, but she knew it involved compromising documents that Richard kept. That night, alone in her room, Martha finally decided. It was time to open the envelope. The extreme necessity had arrived. With trembling hands, Martha carefully opened the sealed envelope. Rex watched attentively, as if comprehending the gravity of the moment. Inside there was a handwritten letter and a small golden key that Martha didn't recognize. She began to read the letter, written with Richard's firm and familiar handwriting. "My dear Martha, if you are reading this letter, it's because you felt that danger is approaching. Trust that instinct. During my years as sheriff, I accumulated evidence against Paul Matthews that was never officially presented. He built an empire based on real estate fraud and extortion, but was protected by powerful people. The key accompanying this letter opens a safe at Meridian Bank Central Branch. There are all the documents and evidence I gathered. These papers are your protection and also your greatest risk. Use them only if absolutely necessary." Above all, trust Rex. He was trained not only to protect but to recognize intentions. If he distrusts someone, there's a reason. With eternal love, Richard. Martha let the tears flow freely down her face. After so long, she finally understood part of the mystery that Richard had taken with him. Rex approached and rested his head on her lap, offering the silent comfort that only a loyal friend could provide. The next morning, Martha headed to Meridian Bank. With the golden key in hand, she was led to the private safe room. The manager, recognizing her as the widow of the respected former sheriff, offered complete privacy. The safe contained a thick folder filled with documents, photographs, and digital media. Martha didn't have time to examine everything in detail, but enough to understand the extent of Paul Matthews's illicit activities. There were records of suspicious transactions, testimonies, and even recordings that could seriously incriminate him. She decided to take only some copies of specific documents, leaving the originals in the safe. That information was too powerful to keep at home. Upon returning to the mansion, Martha found Hannah waiting in the living room, animatedly chatting with Josephine. "Aunt, what a surprise to find you going out so early. Any problem?" asked Hannah, noticing the folder Martha was carrying. "Just some banking matters to resolve, dear," Martha replied, discreetly storing the folder in her purse. "What brings you here today?" "I came to invite you to a special lunch tomorrow. I'm organizing a small gathering with some friends who would love to meet you." Martha noticed something strange in the sudden invitation. Hannah had never been one to organize social events, and certainly had never shown interest in including her aunt in her circle of friends. "How kind, dear, but I have other commitments for tomorrow." Hannah's smile momentarily disappeared, replaced by an expression that Martha couldn't interpret. "That's too bad, Aunt. It would be a great opportunity for you to get out of this mansion a bit." After Hannah's departure, Martha began to examine the documents she had brought. Among them, she found something that left her perplexed: a photo of Paul Matthews with Hannah, dated just 3 months ago. In the image, the two seemed intimate, talking closely in an elegant restaurant. "How is this possible?" Martha murmured to herself. "Hannah barely knew Richard. How could she be involved with Paul?" Rex, who was watching Martha attentively, began to bark at the window, interrupting her thoughts. Martha cautiously approached and glimpsed a dark car parked across the street. The same one she had noticed on previous days. Determined to take action, she called Martin again. "I need your help to investigate my niece Hannah. I believe she may be involved with Paul Matthews." That same night, Charlie received precise instructions from Paul Matthews in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the town. "We can't wait any longer. That old lady went to the bank today, and we know she accessed Richard's safe," said Paul, visibly nervous. "You need to get into that house and find any document she might have brought, and if she causes problems—" "And the dog," interrupted Charlie. "That animal isn't normal. It seems like it sees through people." Paul smiled coldly. "Hannah will take care of that. Tomorrow she'll invite Martha to lunch. If the old lady accepts, great. If not, Hannah has an alternative plan to distract the dog." What no one knew was that, hidden in the shadows of the tight warehouse, Arnold, Martha's gardener, was listening to the entire conversation. He had followed Charlie after recognizing him as the supposed Robert Adams, who had visited the mansion. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Let us know which city you're watching from. We continue. The dawn in Pine Mountain brought a thick fog that enveloped the Adams mansion like a protective mantle. Martha had spent a restless night, alternating between moments of wakefulness and disturbing dreams. Rex remained faithfully by her side, refusing to rest while his owner was agitated. The phone rang early, waking Martha from a brief nap. It was Arnold, his voice trembling with urgency. "Mrs. Adams, I need to speak with you in person. It's about your niece and that man who was in your house." "Arnold, what happened?" asked Martha, now fully awake. "I can't talk on the phone. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Martha hung up, feeling her heart accelerate. Her suspicions were being confirmed. She decided to hide the documents she had brought from the bank in a safe place. Inside a thick book on the library shelf, A simple hiding place, but unlikely to be discovered by someone who didn't know her reading habits. Josephine entered the room as Martha was putting the book back on the shelf. "Mrs. Adams," Ms. Hannah just called. "She said she'll come pick you up for lunch at 11 o'clock, even though you declined. She said she won't take no for an answer this time." "Thank you, Joey," Martha replied thoughtfully. "Could you prepare breakfast, please? Arnold will be coming to see me soon." When Arnold arrived, his face showed concern and fear. Rex greeted him with the familiarity of someone who knows a long-time friend. "Mrs. Adams, last night I followed that man who came here claiming to be Mr. Richard's nephew. He met with Paul Matthews in an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Your niece Hannah was there too." Martha felt her blood freeze. Arnold continued, "They're planning to invade your house. They want documents that you brought from the bank. And Hannah, she's going to try to get you out of the house today to facilitate the invasion. And if I refuse to leave, they have a plan to incapacitate Rex." Arnold hesitated, choosing his words. Something about adulterated food that Hannah would bring as a gift for him. Martha thanked Arnold for his loyalty and asked him not to comment with anyone about what he had discovered, not even with Josephine. After the gardener left, she called Martin and reported the entire situation. "Don't leave your house today, Martha," Martin advised. "I'll organize a discreet surveillance around the mansion. If they try anything, we'll be ready." At 10:30, the doorbell rang. It was Hannah arriving earlier than expected, carrying a large, colorful basket. "Aunt, I'm ready for our lunch. I know you said you had commitments, but I won't accept excuses today," said Hannah with a radiant smile, entering without waiting for an invitation. Rex immediately became alert, growling softly at the basket Hannah was carrying. "What do we have here? Are you jealous, Rex?" "I brought some little presents for you too, big guy," Hannah said, trying to sound affectionate, but with a perceptible tremor in her voice. "Hannah, as I said yesterday, I really can't go to lunch today," Martha stated firmly. "I have an important appointment with Martin, an old colleague of Richard's." Hannah's smile momentarily faltered. "Martin? That private investigator? What could you want with him?" "Private matters, dear. Things that Richard left pending," Martha responded vaguely, observing her niece's reaction. Hannah put the basket on the table, visibly upset. Inside, Martha could see some packages wrapped in colorful paper and a container that seemed to contain dog food. "Well, since I can't convince you, I'll leave these gifts. This one is special for Rex, a gourmet pâté for dogs that I bought at a specialty store," said Hannah, removing the container from the basket. "Very kind, dear, but Rex follows a rigorous diet prescribed by the vet. Any change could harm his health," Martha responded, preventing Hannah from opening the container. The atmosphere became tense. Rex didn't take his eyes off Hannah, positioning himself between her and Martha like a protective barrier. After a few uncomfortable minutes, Hannah finally said goodbye, not completely hiding her frustration. As soon as Hannah left, Martha called Martin again. She tried exactly as Arnold predicted. "She wanted to take me out and leave adulterated food for Rex." "We're keeping an eye on her, Martha. 2 men are discreetly following her car," Martin responded. "But I have even more worrying news. Paul Matthews moved a large sum of money yesterday, the kind of amount one pays for illegal services." The afternoon advanced slowly in the mansion. Martha noticed that Rex was increasingly agitated, moving from window to window as if sensing something. The phone rang again. It was Josephine, who had gone out to shop. "Mrs. Adams, there are 2 strange men lurking near the mansion. I'm watching from the bakery. They seem to be waiting for something." Dark clouds began to form in the Pine Mountain sky, announcing an approaching storm. The wind gradually increased, shaking the branches of the trees around the Adams mansion. Martha watched from the window, feeling that nature seemed to conspire to increase the tension of that day. "Joey, don't come home now," Martha instructed on the phone. "Go directly to your sister's house and stay there tonight. Say I gave you time off." "But Mrs. Adams, will you stay alone with this storm coming?" asked Josephine, concerned. "I'm not alone, I have Rex with me, and Martin assured me there are people watching the house. I'll be fine." After hanging up, Martha felt a chill. Something told her that this night would be decisive. She checked the locks on the doors and windows again and prepared for what might come. Rex remained alert, following Martha's every movement like a protective shadow. The phone rang again. It was Martin. "Martha, we've identified the men who are lurking around your house. One of them is Charlie Robbins, known for petty thefts and break-ins. The other is Jake Sanders, a thug frequently employed by Paul Matthews. We're maintaining surveillance, but with this storm coming, they might think it's the perfect time to act. What should I do, Martin?" "Stay in your room with Rex. Lock the door well. My men are positioned and I'm on my way. If you hear anything suspicious, call emergency immediately." The first thunders began to sound, still distant but approaching rapidly. The rain started as a fine drizzle, gradually increasing until it transformed into a downpour. The lights in the mansion flickered a few times, and then, as was common during storms in the mountainous region, the electrical power was completely interrupted. Martha lit some candles that she always kept on hand for these occasions. The old mansion, now illuminated only by the flickering light of the flames, took on an even more somber aspect. The shadows danced on the walls like silent ghosts. Rex suddenly stood up and ran to the window in the hallway, growling softly. Martha followed him cautiously, without making noise. Through the half-open curtain, she could see two figures moving through the garden, taking advantage of the darkness and the noise of the storm as cover. With her heart racing, Martha retreated to the bedroom and tried to call Martin, but discovered that the storm had also affected the phone signal. She was incommunicado. "It's just us now, my friend," she whispered to Rex, caressing his head. Outside, Charlie and Jake cautiously approached the back entrance. The intense rain drenched them, but also offered the perfect protection for their invasion. The men that Martin had positioned were having difficulty maintaining surveillance with the visibility reduced by the storm. "Are you sure the old lady is alone?" asked Jake while Charlie worked on the back door lock. "Hannah guaranteed it. The housekeeper went out to shop and shouldn't return with this storm. The only problem is that damn dog, but I have something for him," Charlie responded, showing a small package of meat that contained a potent sedative. Inside the mansion, Martha made a decision. Instead of hiding in the bedroom as Martin had suggested, she decided to confront the invaders in her own way. She knew every corner of that house. They didn't. That was her advantage. Quickly, Martha took the envelope with the documents she had hidden and stored it in an inside pocket of her jacket. Then, she strategically positioned some candles throughout the house, creating shadows and points of light that could confuse the invaders. Finally, she took Richard's old gun that she kept locked in a drawer in the office. She had never needed to use it, but Richard had taught her the basics of its operation. Rex was increasingly agitated, growling toward the direction of the kitchen. Martha silenced him with a gentle gesture. If the invaders knew exactly where the dog was, they could try to neutralize him first. The subtle sound of the back door being broken open was almost completely muffled by a particularly strong thunderclap. Martha felt a shiver run down her spine. They had entered. "Go straight to her bedroom," Charlie whispered to Jake. "I'll check the office. The documents must be in one of those places." The two men separated, moving carefully through the dark house. Charlie lit a small flashlight, revealing the interior of the kitchen. He didn't notice the silent shadow of Rex, who was sneaking around following Martha's silent instructions. Jake slowly climbed the stairs, the old wood creaking under his heavy feet. With each creak, he stopped, holding his breath, trying to identify if he had alerted anyone. The second-floor hallway was illuminated by a single candle, creating a tunnel of shadows that seemed to engulf him. Martha waited patiently, hidden in a small niche in the hallway. Rex was strategically positioned at the other end, ready to act at her command. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the mansion a different kind of storm was about to unfold. Jake continued advancing down the second-floor hallway, his heavy breathing mixing with the sound of rain battering the windows. With each step he felt as though he was being watched, but he attributed this sensation to the tension of the moment. Downstairs, Charlie methodically searched Richard's office. Drawers were carefully opened and closed, books removed from shelves, and quickly checked. The beam of his flashlight danced across the walls, briefly illuminating the portraits of Richard in his time as sheriff. In one of them, the former sheriff proudly posed alongside Rex, both wearing police uniforms. "Where did you hide those documents, old man?" Charlie muttered to himself, frustrated at finding nothing. In the second-floor hallway, Jake finally reached the door to the master bedroom. He pushed it open slowly, expecting to find Martha sleeping or hiding. To his surprise, the room was empty, the bed perfectly made. A single candle lit on the bedside table created threatening shadows in the corners of the room. "What the hell?" he whispered, cautiously entering the room. It was at this moment that Martha made her move. With an almost imperceptible whistle, she gave the signal to Rex. The German shepherd, using all his police training, moved silently down the hallway until he was directly behind Jake. When the intruder turned around, he found himself facing the attentive eyes and bared teeth of the imposing animal. "Don't move," Martha's voice sounded firmly from inside the closet where she was hidden. "Rex was trained to attack at my command. One sudden movement and you won't stand a chance." Jake froze, fear evident on his face. His hands visibly trembled. "Ma'am, there's been a mistake. I just—" "Spare your lies," Martha interrupted, emerging from the closet with Richard's gun firmly pointed. "I know exactly who you— Darren, why you're here. Paul Matthews sent you." Downstairs, Charlie was beginning to get impatient. He decided to go up to help Jake and check the bedroom. At the foot of the stairs, however, something caught his attention, a small trail of water droplets on the floor, different from the marks that he and Jake had left when entering. Someone else had been there recently. Charlie drew his own weapon and began to cautiously climb the stairs. The noise of the storm muffled his steps, giving him the confidence that he could surprise anyone who might be on the upper floor. In the bedroom, Martha kept Jake at gunpoint, while Rex remained in attack position. "Where's your partner?" she asked. "In the office, looking for the documents," Jake responded, calculating his chances of escape. "And Hannah? What exactly is her involvement in all this?" Jake hesitated, but faced with Rex's more intense growl, decided to speak. "Hannah has been Charlie's lover for years. She discovered about the documents through Paul Matthews, who promised a generous reward if we could recover them. He's afraid of what you might do with that evidence." Martha showed no surprise. Her suspicions were correct. Hannah had never approached out of family affection, but out of interest in the secrets and fortune that Richard had left. "And what does Paul intend to do with me after he obtains the documents?" Martha asked, already imagining the answer. Before Jake could respond, a noise in the hallway alerted everyone. Charlie had reached the top of the stairs and was now approaching the bedroom. "Jake, found anything?" he called in a low voice. Rex immediately turned to the door, ready to face the new threat. Martha, however, kept the gun pointed at Jake. "Tell him to enter unarmed or you'll suffer the consequences," Martha whispered. "Charlie, I'm here. The old lady, she—" Jake began, but was interrupted by a deafening thunder that shook the house. Taking advantage of the momentary distraction, Jake lunged at Martha, trying to take her gun. Rex reacted instantly, leaping onto the intruder with military precision. His teeth sank into Jake's arm, who screamed in pain. Charlie, hearing the scream, ran to the bedroom with his weapon drawn. The scene he found left him momentarily paralyzed. Jake fallen on the floor, Rex keeping him immobilized, and Martha, now with the gun pointed directly at him. "Lower your weapon," Martha ordered with surprising calm. "Slowly." Charlie evaluated his options. The storm continued outside, thunder and lightning creating a chaotic scenario. The chances of landing an accurate shot in those conditions were minimal, especially with the dog ready to attack at the slightest signal. "You won't shoot, ma'am," Charlie tried, keeping his gun raised. "You don't have the courage." "Try your luck," Martha responded, and there was something in her eyes that made Charlie reconsider. At that moment, a new noise came from downstairs. Hurried steps climbing the stairs. Charlie, thinking they were reinforcements for the invaders, smiled briefly. His smile disappeared when Martin's voice echoed through the hallway. "Police, lower your weapons." Martin appeared at the bedroom, door accompanied by 2 officers. The relief on Martha's face was visible. "Lower the gun now," Martin ordered Charlie. The intruder, seeing himself completely surrounded, finally obeyed, letting the gun fall to the floor. "Mrs. Adams, are you all right?" asked Martin, approaching while the officers handcuffed Charlie and tended to Jake, still immobilized by Rex. "I'm fine, Martin. You arrived just in time." The storm complicated everything. We lost the phone signal, but when we saw these two entering, we acted immediately. The dawn in Pine Mountain brought a clear sky, as if the previous night's storm had carried away all the clouds and tensions. The Adams mansion, however, still bore the marks of the confrontation: furniture out of place, some drops of blood on the bedroom carpet, and a heavy silence that hung in the air. Martha was sitting on the porch, Rex faithfully lying at her feet, when Martin arrived in his official car. The investigator's face bore a serious but satisfied expression. "Good morning, Martha. How did you sleep?" he asked, accepting the cup of coffee that Josephine quickly offered. "Surprisingly well, considering everything," she responded. "Rex didn't leave my side for even a minute. He seems to perfectly understand what happened." Martin smiled, observing the German shepherd, who gazed at him with attentive and intelligent eyes. "He's really special. Richard knew what he was doing when he trained him," he commented, before, assuming a more professional tone, "I have important news. Charlie and Jake talked quite a bit after they were detained. The information we obtained is enlightening and, I confess, also disturbing." Martha straightened in her chair, preparing herself for what was to come. "I'm ready to hear, Martin. Paul Matthews has been in custody since early morning. The evidence you kept in the bank, along with the testimonies of Charlie and Jake, formed a solid case against him. Real estate fraud, extortion, adulteration of public documents. The list is extensive." Martha nodded silently. A part of the justice that Richard had sought was finally being fulfilled. "And Hannah?" she asked, though she already imagined the answer. Martin sighed before responding. "Hannah is a fugitive. She was warned by someone inside the police station about the arrests of Charlie and Paul. We believe she has left town, but all exits are being monitored. She won't go far," Martha commented with a quiet certainty. "Money was always her motivation, and now she's without access to it." Martin hesitated, seeming to carefully choose his next words. "Martha, there's something else you need to know. Something about Hannah that we discovered during the investigations." Martha's heart slightly accelerated. What else could exist that she didn't yet know? "Hannah isn't really your niece," Martin finally revealed. "She's the daughter of Paul Matthews with your sister, Laura." Martha felt as if the world stopped for an instant. Rex, sensing her disturbance, drew closer, touching his muzzle to her hand. "My sister and Paul?" she murmured, trying to process the information. "But how? When?" "It was many years ago, even before you met Richard. According to the testimonies we collected, Paul and Laura had a brief relationship. When she became pregnant, he abandoned her. Laura, embarrassed, invented the story of a deceased husband and raised Hannah alone until her passing," Martha completed, remembering the sister who had departed so many years ago. "Hannah discovered the truth when she was 20. Instead of confronting her father, she decided to use him. She made a deal. She would approach you, claiming to be your niece, and try to discover what Richard knew about Paul's business. In exchange, he would recognize her as his daughter and include her in his will." Martha closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a wave of sadness. Not for Hannah's betrayal, whom she had never really considered family, but for her sister Laura, who had carried that secret for so long. "There's one more thing, Martha," Martin continued. "We found in Hannah's apartment a diary that belonged to your sister. I believe you should read it. There are revelations there that might change your perspective on many things." 2 days later, the Adams mansion received an unexpected visit. Martha was in the garden, pruning her rose bushes with Arnold's help, when Rex began to bark, announcing someone's arrival. A young woman of approximately 20, with features that vaguely resembled Hannah's, but with much kinder eyes, approached the gate timidly. "Mrs. Adams," she called hesitantly. "My name is Lucy. I'm Hannah's daughter." Martha looked at the young woman with surprise. Hannah had never mentioned having a daughter. "Please, come in," Martha invited, observing how Rex, normally distrustful, calmly approached the newcomer, as if examining and approving her presence. In the living room, with tea served by Josephine, Lucy revealed her story. "My mother left me with my grandmother Laura when I was just 2 years old. I grew up hearing stories about the Addams family, about how my great-aunt Martha was an admirable woman. When my grandmother passed away, I found letters she never sent to you, telling about me, wishing to bring us closer." Martha listened attentively, seeing in that young woman not the traits of manipulation of Hannah, but the genuine goodness that reminded her of her sister Laura. "I came to Pine Mountain looking for my mother, but when I heard what happened," Lucy hesitated, "I thought perhaps you would like to know that you have a family member who really wishes to know you without ulterior motives." Rex, who had remained close during the entire conversation, rested his head in Lucy's lap in a gesture of acceptance that didn't go unnoticed by Martha. "You know, Lucy," said Martha, with a warm smile forming on her face, "I've always believed that Rex has a sixth sense for judging people's character, and he seems to have completely approved of you." The following weeks brought significant changes to the Addams mansion. Lucy, who was studying veterinary medicine, moved into one of the guest rooms, bringing with her a youthful energy that the place hadn't seen in decades. She developed a special bond with Rex, caring for him with the technical knowledge of her training and the affection of someone who genuinely loves animals. The case against Paul Matthews advanced in court, with Martha testifying and providing all the evidence that Richard had so meticulously collected. Hannah remained missing, but for Martha that no longer mattered so much. The void that the false niece had left was filled by Lucy's genuine presence. On a particularly sunny afternoon, Martha found Lucy in the garden, leafing through Laura's diary that Martin had recovered. "She loved him very much, you know," Lucy commented without raising her eyes. "My grandmother always loved Mr. Richard since adolescence, but he only had eyes for you." Martha sat beside the young woman, surprised by the revelation. "Laura loved Richard. I never knew that." "Yes, it's all here," confirmed Lucy, showing pages of the diary. "She got involved with Paul in a frustrated attempt to forget Richard. When she realized her mistake, it was already too late. Even so, she never blamed anyone but herself, and she continued admiring the couple you formed from a distance." Rex approached, lying between the two women like a silent guardian of that moment of connection. "I think Richard knew," Martha murmured, caressing the head of the faithful German shepherd. "He always said that certain things don't need to be said to be true, and that time eventually reveals everything that matters." The sun began to set behind the Pine Mountain peaks, painting the sky with golden and orange hues. In the Addams mansion, a new story began to be written. A story no longer of secrets and betrayals, but of redemption and new beginnings. And Rex, the faithful guardian, remained there, vigilant as always, protecting not just a home, but a family that was being reborn. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Let us know which city you're watching from.